Welcome to our Saturday Simulcast. We are looking at the February 24th edition. I want to thank our sponsor, the Union Club Hotel and Boiler Bar, 811 Bistro, and Leaps Coffee. We'll be there next week for a couple of meetings, so we're grateful for them. Today's show, really a special one. We say they're all special, but this is one. Obviously, Brian Neubert will lead us off. We'll be talking Purdue, Rutgers, and of course, looking ahead to tomorrow's matchup against Michigan State. But then also Rick Mount will join us in segment two, and Rick will be part of. We talked to Rick earlier in the week, and always lively and interesting about what the Rocket had to say about not only shooting styles for Fletcher Lawyer and coaching choices by Matt Painter, but always interesting to hear what Rick has to say. Then, of course, Dave Schellhase, and Dave, All-American, the class 3 years before Rick Mount, and led the nation in scoring, and of course the bobblehead for the Purdue Minnesota game earlier this month. He joins us as well, talks about his new book as well. A book about Dave Schellhase, his autobiography, and a lot more. So we thank you for watching, and on to the show. Brian Neubert joins us, and we'll shed some wisdom on Purdue men's basketball and other topics as we get to them today. But for segment one, Brian, you wrote and talked about pretty near perfect performance in a lot of ways in Purdue, and who would have thought that Purdue would put 96 points up on Rutgers? That was quite stunning to me, and probably and certainly to you. But this is a Purdue had a lot of things go well last night, and you could start with a number of different things. But now that you've had a half a night to sleep on it, your takeaways, your thoughts as you looked about writing your upon further review and on down.
Yeah, well, it's easy to say it was a perfect game because of the final score, but once
Yeah,
Purdue cleaned up the turnovers, I think this was as much of a reminder of what Purdue's vulnerability is as the three losses were, because for a while there, Rutgers was getting turnovers, Rutgers was scoring off turnovers, and Purdue had a game on its hands. As soon as that stopped, you saw what happened. Purdue scores 96 points on the number two defense efficiency-wise in college basketball thereafter. And not all of them after the turnovers, but you know what I
sure.
mean. It really underscored the fact that when Purdue takes care of the ball and Purdue doesn't make it easier on its opponent to score, this is one of the most difficult teams in college basketball to beat. Prior to tonight, I think this is a really important stat that I've written about a bunch of times here. Is
Yeah.
the three losses, the opponent averaged 20 points a game off turnovers, off Purdue turnovers. And I really think it is that simple. If Purdue just takes care of the ball, they are going to be really, really hard to beat. And we don't even know what the pathway is to beating them because
Mhm.
it hasn't happened. It's not just the turnovers Purdue denies itself. More importantly, it's the offense it gives its opponents that way. And that shouldn't be the first thing I mention after Purdue wins by 1,000 points against a borderline NCAA team. I don't think they're going to get in, but
No.
I think they're on the far end of the bubble. But 96 points against Rutgers. Rutgers is built to defend, to rebound, and Purdue scores 96. That this was no one could have seen Rutgers giving up this many points to anyone. But Purdue is quite possibly the best offensive team in the country when it doesn't turn the ball over.
Right.
And I think that's really the biggest takeaway from kind of last night's game, even though that might not be the thing that necessarily jumps out to everybody in the wake of a couple of absolutely brilliant individual performances, starting with Zach Edey, Camden Heide, Braden Smith, on down the line here.
Camden Heide, obviously, 7 for 7 from the field, career high 19, was it at the end of the day?
It
Or
was
16,
18.
18, but it was flawless. But teams look good when the shots go in. But I think that is an interesting comment about just the fact that what was it? Purdue was at a point and a half per possession last night. It's hard to get beat if the Purdue doesn't turn the ball over.
Right.
Um, yes, it is interesting. At Rutgers in the first 10 minutes of that game, or for maybe the first 7 or 8 minutes, looked like a team that was going to not only give Purdue a 40-minute game, but a team that looked like an NCAA level team. And now, after getting boat race by 28 points. You're right. The Scarlet Knights are not one of the 6 teams that look to be in good shape to make the NCAA tournament in the Big Ten. All right, Braden Smith, and as you mentioned, Zach Edey, a lot made of just, again, Edey doesn't even play the last 9 minutes or whatever it was, 7, 8 minutes in that game. But Purdue is now making its free throws also. The last 2 games has been a turnaround that's been important, especially at home. Going to Michigan Sunday and a team that Purdue should handle with relative ease. It did the first time around, but any correlations between, or how do you view that game based on the heels? I think Ohio State's a much better team than Michigan, but Doug McDaniel will play in that game. But what do you see? Is it still gets back down to Purdue takes care of the ball? It's going to win and win relatively easy. Is that what you see on Sunday?
Well, I don't think anything's ever easy on the road. But like, if Purdue doesn't turn the ball over, Purdue should be fine. And I don't want to say every game they play from here on out, because obviously Illinois is going to be a tough game.
Yes.
And then, in the NCAA tournament, you don't take anything for granted ever. But if Purdue just takes care of the ball, I think Doug McDaniel adds a little bit of a different complication for Purdue, in the sense that he's one of those quick guards against a team that, isn't always great against dribble penetration. That was not a factor in the first game, obviously, because Doug McDaniel could not travel. He will play in this game, obviously. But at the same time, Michigan lost Olivier Comqua. Is that
Yeah,
what?
I think that's
I yeah. Um, that's a big loss for them. So I think that this is going to be a different Michigan team in more ways than one. But Purdue is head and shoulders better than them. And, it's kind of one of those deals too, where there's probably not going to be a lot of fans there. Michigan's got very little to play for here. And you sort of wonder where their head is. But no, I think that Purdue lost to Ohio State, and that happens. People lose games in college basketball. And I think the subsequent freak out, and I'm running the risk here of conflating social media with real life.
dangerous thing to do.
But I think that, everything is so overheated anymore in terms of the way college basketball is discussed online. I think that, I think Purdue people are a little bit PTSD afflicted. But the Ohio State game didn't change anything. They're the same team they were before. They're one of the best teams in college basketball, if not the best team in college basketball. And I just think that when Purdue doesn't turn the ball over, they're great. And I think that they showed that against Rutgers. And I don't anticipate any of their performances from here on out being anything other than that. Everyone in college basketball loses games. So the Ohio State game was not any sort of existential revelation about what Purdue is or isn't. And I think you'll see at Michigan a team that comes out pretty good and plays pretty well.
You got to remember, Ohio State was a quad one loss. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this is a good basketball team.
With good
And
players. Like,
yeah, I
that's
mean,
what people don't understand. Is like Bruce Thornton was a 5-star recruit for a
yeah,
reason.
yeah,
Jamison Battle is a proven guy and 20-something years old.
yeah.
I'm trying to think of who else. But it's not like Purdue went and lost to Toledo. or
Yeah.
something like that, or played bad. I don't think Purdue has not shown up for a game this year. I don't think they've had an off day. I think they've had spells of turnovers, and that's really it. I don't think we would tend to look at a trip to Michigan right now as, the quote unquote trap game
Yeah.
because we have to assign some sort of storyline to every game. But at what point this season has Purdue really fallen into a trap in a quote unquote trap game? They haven't. They have just had games where they have turned the ball over and the opponent has shot really well from three. Those are the two common denominators for beating Purdue. And those would be the two common denominators for beating anyone in college basketball. But everybody loses games. And I think that there's a reason there hasn't been an undefeated team in college basketball in longer than I've
40,
been
since
alive.
before you were born.
Yeah.
Before you were born, a year before you were born, right? So
And there
1976.
are plenty of college teams that have NBA lineups that have the best players in the country all over their roster, that have the best coaches in the country coaching them, who play hard, who take care of the ball, who do everything right and are just dominant college basketball teams. They lose games. It doesn't mean they're not as good as everyone thinks they are. It doesn't mean that they're vulnerable. It doesn't mean um, anything more than it's a long season. Everybody's playing 30 some games. There are two teams on the floor, and stuff happens. Uh, so I guess I keep kind of coming back to how much this Rutgers loss or this Rutgers win, you know, kind of disproved or whatever, all the overreaction to the Ohio State game. Because, right afterwards, UConn gets boat race. I don't know why Purdue UConn is a thing online, but
It is a thing though. I don't know. It is
um,
crazy.
right after Purdue loses a close game, a quad one loss at Ohio State, UConn goes to Creighton and gets boat raced. Illinois goes to Penn State,
Melts down.
completely melts down. Those are the two teams that I guess Purdue is getting compared to because Illinois is number two in the Big Ten. UConn was number one in the country, whereas Purdue, I think, was number two before Ohio State. And everyone loses.
Yeah.
Everyone loses every year. And it doesn't mean anything more than that.
Yeah, I think you look at even last night or on Thursday night, Arizona, who has become, I think it's one thing, it's an interesting narrative is the flavor of the week. It became UConn has been the flavor of the last couple of weeks. Maybe it's the team that's number one. Houston, Kansas was for a while after they beat Houston. They're good enough to win it all. And now, of course, Arizona loses last night at home to a 21st ranked Washington State team. Arizona was kind of becoming, they're back in it. They're really good. And that's, again, I guess it sells podcast or Zoom viewers, et cetera. I don't know, but that's what we're seeing on a weekly basis. Is who's in Purdue maybe number one on Monday if Baylor loses or beats Houston, I suppose, and Purdue will reemerge as the flavor of the week. I mean, is that as simple as that in terms of where this is on a media / social media landscape?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the culture of endless debate online. Who's better than
Yeah,
who? And it's not like any of these teams are different today than they were yesterday. It's not like Purdue just all of a sudden turned into a better team than they were on Sunday at Ohio State. Everyone loses. It doesn't mean that, you know, Purdue and UConn are taking turns being the best teams in the country. They're the same teams they were before the games they lost last week. It's just a matter of everyone loses. Um, but there always has to be some sort of heated discussion going on about things that will get people to click, get people to engage, and things like that. And it's really overheated the way. And I have a lot of opinions on why that is, but I don't want to necessarily take up this whole podcast
yeah.
with me kind of pointing fingers at people in the media or pointing fingers at various platforms or pointing fingers at various fans or various players in the Big Ten, shall we say.
Yeah.
But it is just kind of an ugly landscape right now, and it has killed perspective. When you have done this for 20 years, you understand that, every season comes with its ups and downs. These are volatile commodities in terms of teams made up of young men, and there's going to be some inconsistencies sometimes. There's going to be some ups and downs, but Purdue has had very few ups and downs. People look at Purdue like, "Oh my God, they lost to Ohio State. They're overrated. They're bound for a collapse." No, that's not accurate. Um, but whatever.
Yeah. Don't know if we're going to solve that one, but it is going to be an interesting story and be a continuing one throughout the rest of the regular season and conference tournaments. All right, Fletcher Lawyer did some good things last night in terms of 5 assists. What do you make of? He hasn't been. He's only had a couple baskets here in the last several games, but again, Matt Painter went out of his way, not maybe out of his way, but talked about the contribution Lawyer's making. That is another flashpoint by some Purdue fans over him, or whether Miles Coleman should be playing, all of those kinds of things. Just give us your take on that. I know you've also written about that logically and honestly, but what do you see there?
I think Purdue scored 96 points
Yeah.
last night against the number 2 defense in college basketball. I think that at Ohio State, if Purdue just did not turn the ball over 13 times before that last turnover for 22 Ohio State points, Purdue wins that game, and Purdue has won its last 11 games. I don't think that there's any sort of element here that's anything more than a manufactured online debate. Fletcher Lawyer is not making shots, but he's not getting shots
Yeah, he's not shooting.
because
Yeah.
he is a marked man for defenses now. And on some level, that probably helps Zach Edey score 25 points on 8 shots, which is
Yeah, crazy.
unbelievable.
Crazy.
That probably helps Camden Heide get off 7 or 4 open threes, which then leads to his other 3 makes off the dribble. It probably helps Lance Jones get off 5 threes, 3 of which he makes. You don't, and a lot of people won't agree with me here because it's just one of
Because they
those
won't.
things. But you don't necessarily field good offense by having 5 guys always looking to score. You field good offense by having 5 good offensive players on the floor. And Fletcher Lawyer's as good an offensive guard as, Purdue's had, I think, in quite some time. It doesn't mean he's as good a scorer as, some of the guys Purdue's had. I think he's not far behind, but he's as good an offensive player in the backcourt as Purdue has had. That means passing, that means dribbling, that means decision making, things like that. And Purdue is not struggling to score. When Purdue does struggle to score, it's turning the ball over. Is he part of that problem? Yeah, once or twice every now and then. He had one yesterday that was probably more on Edey than it was on Lawyer. He had one at Ohio State, but he's a really good player. And giving up on really good players because there's a 2 next to his name after a game in which he scored 92 points or 96 points when he had 5 assists, which means that's at least 10 points that he contributed in one way or another. That's not how this works. You want to put Miles Coleman out there instead? That fine. But there's you're 24-4, whatever, or 24-3, whatever your record is right now, with who you're playing, and the whole notion of making wholesale changes right before the postseason is absurd. But it's the stir craziness of this time of year where every game everybody wants to change the starting lineup. Every year, this guy's not scoring enough, so this guy shouldn't play as much. It's just got to have something to talk about at all times. This is not really a thing. Um, I think that uh, his time's going to come again. I think that's the cyclical nature of things. Remember, he didn't do anything against Alabama, and then he comes out the next game and gets 27 against Arizona. I think people who might be coming in mid-season uh, here to celebrate whatever might happen for Purdue from here on out and talk, to their friends from IU at work. Maybe don't remember the Tennessee and Arizona games. And 2 games does not a season make, but he's no different a player now than he was then. He's not worn down. He's not any of that stuff. He is just not getting shots. And that is a compliment because when you watch the games, you see that no one is leaving him. He got one open look yesterday that was like a 30-footer. I think he might have got another one, too, that he missed. But things have changed, and that's the nature of a long college basketball season, especially in the Big Ten when everybody knows what everybody's capable of doing. He'll be fine. I think the shots he got at Ohio State off the dribble were shots he can make. They're also reboundable misses that the analytics community would be very high on, and 2 of those misses were rebounded. One of them for a direct putback. Those are good plays for Purdue. It's just he didn't make the runners that he often makes. There's no issue here. This is just stir craziness late in a long season.
Yeah, I think that is well said, and we'll be dealing with that stir craziness until the tournament is over. if you're maybe before the tournament starts, but then once it gets started, that will continue as well. One would think. So, all right, Brian, safe travels to Michigan, and we'll look for your excellent work on goldenblack.com from that game as well. Stay tuned. We'll be back for segment 2. It's older All-Americans Day on Golden Black Live, and with Rick Mount and Steve Schellhase joining us as well. So we'll be back in 2 minutes on Golden Black Live with the living legend Rick Mount, and we are at Stookies, which we do every now and then. It's a private meeting. You only have a very select group of people that you will allow into your inner circle. Is that right?
Yeah, it started out where we had about 12.
Yeah.
Everybody's died off. And Larry Engel's gone now. He's in Iowa. So
yeah, we're gonna have a fun. We will talk basketball today. We will solve all the world's problems. Rick is. He is Purdue's all-time leading scorer. We're going to ask him about Zach Edey, who is going to at least may surpass his point total.
But probably not. But no, I don't always see bad things.
No, you don't want to do that. But I want to tell you because Edey is.
But I'm a competitor. You know that.
Yeah, I know you are. And the competitive nature of Purdue basketball, you saw you guys in your championship year lost at Ohio State. Boilermakers lost at Ohio State on Sunday. What are you seeing in terms of this? I mean, this team's got a lot of weapons. Purdue does, obviously with Edey, got shooters, but you got to make shots anymore in college basketball.
I got to correct you on one thing.
Yeah,
you said my senior year we got beat Ohio State.
No, senior year you won.
We won.
The championship year.
Okay.
That was your only conference lunch. Yeah.
Okay.
You got it. I love it when you correct me.
Maybe I wasn't listening. I'm 77 years old now.
Young,
still have a birthday.
Yeah, that's
somebody said, "What did you celebrate on your birthday?" And I said, "No, I didn't celebrate. All I do is sit in my easy chair and celebrate. I had another birthday,
January 5th, 1947. That's the day. So, all right, got to answer my question. So,
remind me again.
Purdue needs to come back. Obviously, by the time this airs, they will have played Rutgers, but against Ohio State. It is a team that has shot the ball very well from 3 for most of the year. They only got 9 shots up against Ohio State. Yeah. What did you see in that game, and what do you see as moving forward with this team?
You mean the Purdue Ohio State game?
Yeah.
I knew that could happen because it is fired the coach.
Yeah.
And that guy probably had him. I watched him play one night on Big Ten channel, Ohio State.
They got talent.
And the guy called timeout, Holtman, and they were all looking in the stands. The assistant coaches wasn't listening. I figured there was a problem there.
Yeah.
So their minds, and they wanted to get out and run a little bit and open it up. And I knew they're going to come out and have a heck of a night. And Purdue was, they're okay. You know, Edie got in foul trouble. They were knocking the ball out of his hand. It could be called a foul, but they didn't. So they got beat. But you know, you slip up once in a while, and you know they're not gonna. I don't think they're gonna lose at home like we were.
Yeah.
Except that last, you know.
Northwestern almost got him, but yeah.
But you know, they can be the national champions. They just got to keep focused and keep an open mind, and you know, and Lawyer, you know, has got. I hope he listens to this because I don't want, you know, I can't.
It's a shooting lesson here. That's right.
But Fletch, you know, you got to, when you get it above that right eye, you got to lift that hand first and then follow through. You can't take that hand first and not jump and toe it because the ball flattens out. When you shoot the best is when you jump on your shot and you lift and follow through and you finish above your head. So there you go. You send me a check for $200.
It's NIL world. They can do that.
I like it. So
well, you had fun last year because they both Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer came down to the old gym where your stomping grounds in Lebanon and shot that video. There is something to be said because you're obviously an Indiana basketball legend, but the whole notion that these guys really care. They're Indiana guys.
Yeah.
Obviously Smith's from Westfield. Lawyer came in late, but just that specialness of being an Indiana guy and what Braden Smith brought to this team has been pretty significant.
You know, the two guys who are the studs are Edie and Smith. They give you that every night, that toughness. They're more consistent. I always wanted to go on 9 good games and maybe have one bad game out of 10, but the bad game was like a good game. But that's what they got to go for. You can't have one good game and 4 bad games. And consistency, you know, if you want to win a national championship. So they got it. You know, that Jones has really helped.
Yes.
That was a big find.
Yeah.
And then he's given them that back quickness that if you wanted to give Smitty a little rest, he can handle that in the NCAA. Those guys are, you know, in your grill, and they're strong and they're quick and they'll press you all over the court. And that's what both those guys, but you know, Smitty can't play the whole game with those guys doing that because they'll bring another guy in and rest, you know. So, but they just keep that consistent, keep that, you know, shooting the ball and don't, when you catch the ball, let it go.
Yeah.
Because paint lets them do that.
Yeah.
Now, Katie, I don't know about Katie, he wants you to pass the ball 10 times, what he called the Purdue goal before you shoot. And I told him, I said, man, your kids ain't got to be in a hell of a lot of good shape to pass the ball 10 times and take a bad shot.
What did you think, though, at Ohio State? Because Purdue has been shooting a lot of threes. They only get 9 up there. Mason Gillis, who's also been excellent all year.
Yeah, Gillis has played well.
But what do you think that's a strategy moving ahead in terms of what teams are trying to do to defend Purdue and how they defend the 3-point line and don't give them as many attempts? Ohio State had some success with that.
And plus, if you look at it, nothing against those guys, you know, when Edie's out of there, they're playing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's a lot of difference. Yeah. With Edie not in there. And when he gets in foul trouble and he has to sit over there for a while, I don't know if I'd sit him at all. I'd just say, go ahead and foul out. Yeah. But that's
and he has brought him in a couple times in back when he's had 2 fouls when things were going south. All right, now the question you're going to get asked because about the record. Now he's never going to break your scoring average record. That ain't happening. That may not happen.
32 5 or
well, that in your senior
32,
years.
Yeah. Oh, that record, but total record.
Talk about it. Still, you're getting a lot of pub these days. Robbie Hummel's your best friend about reminding people you did it in 72 games.
I haven't sent my check to him yet.
But talk about just what that means because you've held that record for a long time. The total points race.
54 years.
Who's counting? There you go.
Well, 1970.
That's 54
beat Don Schlund's
And they tried to stall you
and
on
they
that.
stole Minnesota tried to stall.
But no, tell me what, just because Zach Eady's the kind of guy that
Like him. If you didn't have Zach Eady, you're not number 2 in the country.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh man, look at these guys.
Yeah, we got the brass of the Indian High School Basketball Coaches Association.
But without Zach Eady, you know, you're not number 2 in the country.
Yeah.
And so they, you know, they can do it. But I see the consistency a little bit on that.
But is that maybe a little
number-
bit of the February hit the wall time, or do you think that's
that 3 spot? You know, sometimes you don't get the consistency you do at the 3 spot. You know, lawyers got to get more consistent on the shooting,
and Gillis has been making
Gillis makes some shot. You know, I mean, he's more consistent in it. But you know, sometimes you think, well, maybe I'll go with Gillis and bring Lawyer off the bench. So that makes me a little quicker, a little bigger, and a little stronger. And then I'll play Wren at that 4, and that gives those two guys 30 minutes a game. And so, but you know, I'm not the coach.
You're not.
I sit there in my easy chair, drink my iced tea.
And Lawyer certainly has had his moments, but he's going through a little bit of a hat, at least prior to
Hey, Payne, send me a check. I just give you.
He'll be quick to do that. Talk about the landscape of college basketball. You watch a lot of college basketball. I don't know how much if you've watched UConn play.
You know, it's funny.
Or you just watch Purdue. What
I watch the Big Ten.
Okay.
But I don't watch anything else.
So Illinois
kind of bore me a little bit.
Illinois is good.
But I just, go to the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Yeah. Illinois is really good.
Down league though, maybe after that. I mean, Indiana hasn't been obviously where it's been at times. How do you?
I'll tell you who's coming on. The other night, the second half they got them was Minnesota.
Yeah. Yeah,
they're playing really well.
Really
Chrisley's NBA.
Oh yeah, he's got a sweet.
He's only freshman, and so I figured Ohio State would be a problem over there. Maybe was. Yeah, and then
and Purdue's got to go to Illinois. This is like before the end of the year.
That could be a tough game, but I don't know if anybody else can beat him unless they just fall apart.
Yeah. All right, Caitlin Clark, who you taught her everything she knows, but you've obviously had women's basketball. You followed and taught a lot of kids in the state of Indiana.
Yeah,
shooting in basketball. Talk about her.
No, I never worked with her.
I know, but talk about what she has meant, because she is pretty unbelievable.
She can flat out play.
But it's more than just shooting for her, though, is it not?
Well, she gives it up, which I didn't. I was too good to give it up.
Yeah, there you go.
I was too pretty.
Yeah.
People always say, well, you didn't play no defense. I said, I let the ugly guys play defense.
That may be the quote of the
Caitlin Clark, when you're good, just like myself, I'm not tooting my own horn, but every place we went, we were sold out.
Yeah.
And every place she went, and nothing against Purdue women's basketball, but they might sell out once in a while.
Yeah,
but she brought that lower mezzanine, that lower, but down by the floor is 3/4 full.
Yeah.
And she sold them out. Yeah. And cha-ching, they love her.
Oh, yes.
But she can pass. She got a lot of moxie.
But how much though is attitude a part of this too? I mean, because you had that. The great players do. She thinks that she certainly acts like she's better than everybody else, and she plays like she's better than everybody else. But how much is that when shooting is such a fine art? Where has attitude played into that in terms of having that edge?
A lot of mental.
Yeah,
the shooting is, and the two guys that walked in over there, Randy Shields, he was all mental. That's why he couldn't shoot.
You get him every time he comes in.
And Steve had a lot of good players, so he knows that it's mental, the shooting. Not just kidding you, Randy.
Love you, Rick.
Yeah, but it's a lot of mental. Once you get the stroke, it's a lot of it's mental. Because I was always brought up. Rosie always told me, you might miss your first 5, but you might hit the next, you might hit the next 10.
Yeah. Fletcher Lawyer's got some of that mentality though too. He needs to have a short memory.
Yeah. And but like we talked about, he's got to lift that ball and get some arch on it, and jump a little bit on the shot instead of towing it and taking that hand first. But another thing, I always remember Jerry West. I saw an interview on him, and they always said that Jerry West is pretty athletic. And I'm thinking, people always say, well, Mount's not that athletic. Bullshit.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
No, it's all right. It's the internet. You're good.
I said, when you, like Jerry West said, if you can jump over people when they're guarding you and get up in there, you're pretty athletic. So he needs to get a little bit of that. And I think taking it hard and gathering on that inside foot and making that pivot, and then once that right foot hits, he's up in the air. That's where I used to get those guys. Yeah. So a lot of guys will gather on their inside foot, but then they got to pivot into that shot, and before they gather, they got to put that outside foot on the ground and then go up. That's another second. Yeah. See, I didn't have once my outside foot when I pivot. Once it hit ball toe, I was up in the air. And see, I used to get those guys on that.
Quickness is absolutely essential, and you got to be quick all the way through.
But counting Caitlin Clark, I'm thinking. Here's the other thing I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm sitting home, I'm an old man, and I'm looking at it. I'm thinking, when I was a young kid coming out of college, I didn't have no business mind, and kind of naive. And I'm thinking, Caitlin Clark, Edie.
Yeah.
Edie's making $3 million a year.
Or whatever he is, yeah.
On his clothing, and then the IL.
Yeah.
He's getting $2 million, right?
Something like that. I don't know. I'm not his agent.
That's $3 million. Caitlin Clark's probably making about $3 million for a woman. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Now, why when I come back for my 5th year? Come on, Edie, think business wise. Pocket $3 million. You ain't gonna make $3 million in the NBA. No, I don't say it. Do you guys? No, they make it. But is Caitlin Clark going to make about 140,000?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Why don't I come back for one more year and pocket $3 million apiece, put it in the bank, and then come out?
Are you getting a percentage of that?
Remember that, Edie. Caitlin Clark, if you're watching, come back, and then Edie can set the record where nobody can get it. Yeah. The scoring record, and she can set the scoring record where nobody.
Oh, ain't gonna get her.
But I'm looking at it. This is really funny. They're talking. Well, she just is all-time women's leading scorer. Now she's going after Pete Maravich. Yeah. Pete Maravich did that in 3 years.
Yeah,
just think. You give Pete Maravich and I 70 more games, I'm over 5,000 with a 3-point line, but he's probably at 6,000.
He averaged in the 40s. He got it. All right. On that note, we've had a lot of advice today, so that's a good thing. When Rick does that, we're having it's free though, right?
Nobody wants to hear me about.
Oh yeah, they do.
Those. Yeah, that's why they pay Paint $6 million.
All right, we will be back.
Hey, Paint, send me a check.
Yeah, we're gonna make sure because that's gonna be the first thing he's gonna do on Friday afternoon is watch this.
Oh, really? Hey, Paint. Okay.
We will be back in a couple of minutes. Dave Schellhase, a guy you know well, and a great scorer in his own right, is going to join us as well, and we'll have some fun with that. Rick Mount, thanks so much for your time. We're going to have lunch here with our
bunch of legends over there.
Yeah, our group of 5, so to speak.
It's group of 5.
All right, have a great,
very special guest. This is all-time scores edition of Gold and Black Live. Of course, we had Rick Mount in segment 2. Somebody that Dave knows well, and Dave Schellhase needs no introduction to Purdue fans. Of course, he is number 2 on the all-time list. Though Zach Edey is tromping down on you, and he's going to pass you, I think, as he will Rick if things go well for Purdue. But Dave, obviously a All-American, led the nation in scoring in 1966, All Big Ten multiple times, All-American multiple times, a first-round draft pick of the Chicago Bulls. And we're going to talk about his book as well. And the Schellhase story just released relatively recently, a great book on his story, which is quite a journey. It had a lot to do with basketball, but also a lot to do with life. And I think if you're a Purdue fan or if you're want to know a great sports story, it's well worth picking up. So we'll get to that in a little bit. Dave, you were in Mackey Arena last night. Purdue has a 28-point win against the second best defensive team in the country in Rutgers. Pretty good rebound performance by Purdue against, again, a team that's usually pretty hard to score on. Purdue made easy work of that last night.
Well, they played really well last night. You know, they had, I think Braden Smith's just playing tremendous right now. And that makes a lot of difference with that team. And, of course, off the bench last night, Heidi, made some tremendous athletic moves. So they came to play last night. I think they were a little upset after Sunday's loss.
Yeah, it certainly was that way. It certainly appeared that way. And Purdue seems to have a lot of weapons. You talk in your book, and again with the Schellhase story, about playing with George Grams. It was a 7-footer back in the day. I think might have been Purdue's first 7-footer of all time. Bill Jones was maybe about 6'11" back in the day. How would you have liked to play with Zach-Edey?
Oh, it'd be tremendous. I mean, I tell people that ask me about Purdue, I've never seen a player improve like him.
Yeah.
Over the period of time that he has been at Purdue. And it's really been quite amazing to watch him. Yeah, he opens up the defense. He's someone that can always bail you out. If you miss a shot, he can either get the rebound or I like the fact he knocks it out back sometimes, and the guards get it. And, you know, he probably isn't credited with a rebound, but it's his doing that Purdue gets the ball back. So, yeah, he would be, I mean, they're a whole different team when he's not in the game.
Yeah, no question. And yet it is a team with 10 or 11. I would even throw Brian Waddell in it. There's a lot of weapons. Even Miles Coleman. It's hard to imagine a guy like with Miles' talent not really getting a lot of court time, but when he does get court time, he sure is entertaining. Hit that nice. Your jump shot was beautiful. He has a beautiful jump shot, doesn't he? I mean, he's just fun to watch.
Well, yeah, I mean, their depth and the recruiting that they've done in the last 4 or 5 years has really put Purdue on the national map, and that's been kind of fun.
Yeah. All right, I think I can hold this up so we can see it. The Schellhase story is the name of the book. Again, available on Amazon. We'll put a link on our site so that if you're interested in it. I love stories, and you've lived a few decades, as we both have, and you chose to tell your story, and it is a story about basketball and your basketball career and your life growing up in Evansville and all the things that you brought together from a basketball perspective, but then also kind of your experiences after in coaching, things that worked well in your life, things that didn't always go well, and challenges you had. But I love that part of it. You obviously talk about your bout with alcoholism, and very candid about that, but very valuable. But what got you to decide, you know, I'm going to work to put this thing together? I know you'd had some notes over the years and continue to accumulate thoughts, but what pushed you to the edge of going through the process of having a book?
Well, actually, you know, during my life, there have been some things that have happened, and you know, friends, family have always encouraged me to say, you ought to write a book. Well, I didn't know how to write a book. I mean, that was something beyond me, but I was fortunate to meet a couple of people that told me, you know, basically how to do it. And I found out I was an accidental saver. Yeah. You know, I have some scrapbooks, but not great, but pretty good. And I even have elementary school report cards. So it took me a little while to go through there, and it was healing in a lot of ways. I found a guy that many people in West Lafayette are familiar with, Tom Speaker, who's written a number of books. And what I would do was to record on tape, and then he would write and I would edit, and we would meet weekly. And it took us longer, or at least it took him longer than he thought it would, but we became good friends, and it was very healing in a way, to look back and remember many of the people that have helped me and the things that I experienced. So that's kind of what I did. I just sort of, tried to be as accurate as I could as far as when I played, who was the coach, the players I recruited. I loved coaching, and as you say, I'm actually in 2 days, it'll be 39 years of sobriety. So
Yeah.
It's been a long time, and it was the right time to tell my story, I think. I'm retired. I want to help as many people as I can with this book, especially young professionals that are going out in their career. And hopefully it's been recepted well, and hopefully people will enjoy it. A lot of great things about Purdue. I honestly feel that Purdue's basketball took a huge turn when they hired George King.
Yeah.
Red Mackey hired George King going into my senior year, and ever since then, Purdue's been awfully strong at the Big Ten and national level.
Yeah, no question that was a turning point, and you had the opportunity to play in George's first year, and in year 4, Purdue was in the Final Four under George King in 1968-69 with Rick Mount, Herman Gilliam, Billy Keller, and others that made a big deal with that. I think the interesting thing about redemption and what obviously your situation at Indiana State, you worked your way at Morehead State and in Minnesota to be able to get to that level and have that opportunity in Indiana State. And I don't want to have a spoiler to the story because it's a significant one, but it is, you had to overcome some challenges. You had to overcome an extremely disappointing finish at Indiana State and find yourself back to kind of where you started from at Morehead State. But just talk now as you reflect back at that. What would be your message to people as you would, if you were talking to somebody across that wanted to be in coaching or in life about how to deal with real difficulty?
Well, this was where I went to Indiana State in 1982. And as you say, what I figured out early on in coaching, there's 2 ways to get ahead. Number one is get on someone's coattails.
Yeah.
If you're an assistant for Bobby Knight or you're an assistant for Dean Smith, your chances of getting a head coaching job at the collegiate level are pretty good. Or you have to win.
Yeah.
And I was one of those people that felt like I wasn't on anyone's
right.
Foot-tails. Is that the right word?
Coattails. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, coattails. Well, I was very successful at Morehead State the first time and had the opportunity. I know I interviewed a couple years, interviewed at Drake. I interviewed at Appalachian State. Bobby Crimmins got that job, and then he went on to Georgia Tech and Indiana State. And when I got to Indiana State, unfortunately, based on what I learned later, I was in a critical stage along with my alcoholism. In other words, if I'd have got sober earlier or had stopped earlier, my life may have been different. But it's what it does to you when you drink. It's not how often or whatever. But what happened was I was let go at Indiana State in 1985 and sent to treatment. Unfortunately, I had no anonymity. It was front page, you know, all over the state of Indiana. And it was very difficult from that time on to, the stigma at that time was very strong. I put in the book, and I'm pretty accurate. I applied for over 75 jobs and maybe got 2 interviews, and wound up back at Morehead State, which turned out, in my estimation, to be a blessing, especially for my family. So all of those things, what I tried to do once I got sober was to learn everything I could about alcoholism, and that's in the book.
Yep.
And if it can help, many of us are touched by this, whether it's family members, ourselves, our spouse, our friends. We all have stories, and if it can help someone recognize it, deal with it, that would be great for me.
Well, and I appreciate the fact that 39 years, and you say it's a day at a time, right? It doesn't.
One day at a time. I've met some wonderful people. It's well worth the effort. And, you know, unfortunately, if someone doesn't get sober, it's not going to end well.
And I thought you were very candid about that, about your personal life, et cetera, and some of the challenges it meant for your family down the road. And yet, it is an interesting story, and certainly well articulated your opinion on that in terms of what that was about. Okay, I have to ask you now about, you had a bobblehead last week for the Minnesota game, right? And
yes.
A, what's it like to have a bobblehead? And B, what's it like to stand? You know, you obviously been an educator your whole life. You've taught, but still, and you've taught and had to stand in front of teams, students, etc. A little different standing in front of 14,000 people and posing yourself. But what was that like for you? That experience of A, the bobblehead, and B, standing up there at halftime and articulating a very coherent message.
Well, I think, you know, there's a couple of things. Number one, you know, Matt Painter's done a great job of including former players and managers back into the program. So I've been a season ticket holder for a number of years. And as those years went along, people would say, well, when are they going to have a bobblehead night for you? And I'd say, well, I have no idea. Well, this year they did. And it was a wonderful evening. I have 3 kids. I have a daughter who lives in Tampa and a daughter and son that live in Salt Lake City. And all 3 of them came out. And if they had been to Mackey, it's been when they were very little children. So just going to Mackey's fun.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, people, it was interesting. Now, as far as, I'm very grateful to Purdue for that. I mean, they're sort of cartoon characters anyway. I have a lot of them, but people enjoy them and et cetera. And as far as speaking, I thought about it for a few days, what I wanted to say. I'm very fortunate, and I talk about it in the book, to have selected Purdue. It worked out great for me. Wonderful people helped me over you know, my life just because of Purdue. My brother went there, all his kids. I mean, it's been a great university for all of the Schellhase family. But anyway, I was a little nervous, but when I walked out there, I thought, you know, I want to keep it short. I paid a tribute to the Evansville people. I feel like when I came here, the next year Bob Greasy came here, a lot of us had, we both had success. And I know from coaching that once you get a player from an area and he's successful, you can get other athletes from that area. So, but I also wanted to, you know, just let people know that we're in a very special time in Purdue basketball, and we should enjoy this. You know, people get upset when we lose one game, but you know, it's believe me, as you well know, it could be a lot worse.
You know, it ties into someone that has dealt effectively with alcoholism. It's one day at a time, but you better enjoy the day, right? And if you don't enjoy Purdue basketball right now, or even where they are, you can't fix what's going to happen in March. We'll see what's going to happen in March. They got an opportunity in front of them, but if you don't enjoy what you're watching in Mackey Arena, especially after last night, you're not going to enjoy much.
Well, it's phenomenal when I go to a game and I look at the very top and every seat's taken.
Oh,
I mean, it's just mind-boggling, really.
Yeah. All right. Well, Dave, the name of the book, The Schellhase Story, and I've been looking back, Rise, Fall, Redemption, the story of Purdue legend Dave Schellhase, written by Dave Schellhase and Tom Speaker, as you mentioned, a friend of mine as well, great guy. And it really is, it's a story well worth reading, and the message is important. It's honest. You were very honest about Indiana State and some of the things that caused you to have to deal with, but very, very honest portrayal of what that's about. So we thank you so much for your time today, and we've always appreciate your view. We next time we'll talk about your 57-point game against Michigan back in 19. It'd be helpful for Purdue on Sunday afternoon to have Dave Schellhase throw in, or maybe be Zach-Edey put up 57 against Michigan as you did back in 1966. But thanks so much, and we certainly have enjoyed our relationship over the years, and grateful.
Thank you, Alan, and I think that Purdue fans will enjoy reading about people like Mel Garland and Bob Perkaiser and George King and Bob King, and they touched a lot of lives.
They certainly did, and you articulate that part very importantly. All right, we want to thank our sponsors, Triple X on the hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. State Farm agent Trent Johnson at trentismyagent.com. As well. Good folks at WLFI, Gordon Jackson, Mary. I'm assuming that I know that they're doing a great job to help us out. We appreciate that. We'll be back next week, leading into Purdue's game against Michigan State. I would assume a game that Dave will be there as well. But we'll talk a little bit of media. I think we're going to talk with David Neff from Purdue's Boilermaker Alliance. Dave, who would have thought we'd be talking about collectives in this world today? But college sports has changed, and Dave will join us in addition to some other guests as well. So have a great week, everybody. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll look forward to next week and Golden Black Live, and also all of you that enjoy us on Saturday simulcast too. You get a chance to, if you missed part of this interview, you can check in there as well. So have a great week, all. Want to thank Brian Neubert, Rick Mount, Dave Schellhase for joining us today. And of course, the good folks at the Union Club Hotel for sponsoring our Saturday simulcast. We'll be back next week with another compelling show, we hope, leading into that Purdue-Michigan State basketball game. And we hope that you all have a great week. And we look forward to another edition of Saturday Simulcast.